All right, Mr. Kusmich, great to speak with you, man. This has been a long time coming. I know we've been talking back and forth
Sure
for
has.
quite a while, so it's good to finally put a face to it, and for us to actually get to dialogue. Your a lot of your trainings from back in the day was trainings I used to develop my marketing skills and my marketing
Oh,
ability. So
amazing.
I'm pumped to talk about it.
Hey, dude, I'm glad to spend some time with you and visit and talk about some stuff and just to see all the things you've accomplished and all the things that are going on. I think it's just going to be a great conversation, man.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let's start off first with the origin story. Everyone loves to know the origin
Ah,
story, especially someone like you, man, who have really been in the game for a long time, and you've been behind the scenes for some great companies, has achieved some incredible success with not only the company you have now, but all of your companies. You've had a few, if I recall correctly, right?
yeah, yeah. No, the origin story. I mean, I wish I could say that it happened with a ton of purpose. Like you hear these stories of like, oh, I woke up and I had my first paper route and my lemonade stand and entrepreneurship was in my DNA. And like, I wish I had that story. That's not it at all. I think it was all by accident, happenstance, a little luck of the dice, like being rolled the right way, and us like just being in the right place at the right time. So what I mean by that is like I was born an only child. And everyone has their sob story and their rags to riches story. I don't necessarily need to go into depth about it, but like we grew up with hard times. Like I just remember my parents. I remember one day specifically being in the car and saying, "Mom and Dad, can we go to McDonald's to have a meal?" And they like, without trying to show too much emotion, were like, "Son, we can't do that right now." And I later realized it's because we couldn't afford it. Like we couldn't afford a meal at McDonald's. So it wasn't easy. And like I grew up my entire life just hearing the narrative from my parents of like, I don't know if we're going to make it. It's going to be hard, et cetera, et cetera. And as an only child, that kind of just like weighs on you and weighs on you and weighs on you. Um, I was 4 years old sitting on the couch watching cartoons on a Saturday morning when I witnessed my father have his first heart attack. I didn't know what it was at the time, freaked the hell out of me, but he kind of just like collapsed on the floor and started screaming, gripping his heart. My mom obviously called 911 at the time, went to the hospital, and later I found out that that was his first heart attack. To give you an idea, Ashton, of like what my childhood was like, that was the first of 3 or 4 heart attacks. He then later had a couple of strokes. The last one took his life, which I can get into in a sec. But like I had spent so much time in hospital that when I was 17 years old, I was in the emergency room because my father just had another condition. We're in the emergency room of the trauma section of a big hospital in Toronto at the time. And the cardiac specialist walks in and was like conversing with me about heart issues. And then he turns to me, and again, I'm 17 at the time. He's like, "Nick, where'd you practice medicine?" And I'm like, "Doc, I'm 17, man. I'm still in high school." And he goes, "Well, how do you know all this stuff?" And it's like, because I've been in hospital my whole life, like just with my dad. So I say all that to say, because when my father had his second stroke, it left him paralyzed on his left side, blind on his left side. And the small business that him and my mother had came to an end because he couldn't work anymore. They owned a little convenience store. So he had to stop working. And my mother, who's an immigrant from Korea, had to find a job for the first time in her life, and not really speaking the language all that well and not having any work experience. I remember specifically one day her coming home, tears in her eyes, and I'm trying to like see, "Mom, what happened?" And she wouldn't want to tell me. She finally came out and saying, "Look, I just went for a job interview to fold clothes at a laundromat, and I got rejected from the job because I couldn't speak English that well." And I think I made a decision at that time to just be like, you know what? I don't know how and I don't know where and I don't know why, but I'm going to figure this out because my dad can't work. My mom can't get a job. I'm the only kid. And so at like 15 ish years old, I was almost like thrust into being the primary breadwinner for my family. So entrepreneurship wasn't in my genes. It was forced upon me to figure this stuff out. And of course, as an impressionable like a teen or whatever, you go on the internet like how to make money online. Like, that was what I typed in. And man, you when you're susceptible that way, you kind of get bombarded with everything, like stuffing envelopes, filling surveys out to get paid. I joined I don't know how many network marketing companies at the time, following the dream, and none of that worked out. But then one day, in the midst of all of this, and I don't remember the year, the exact age I was, but I came across a dude by the name of Corey Rudel. Ashton, do you know Corey?
I
Have you
don't.
heard this name? Okay, so we might have a bit of an age gap here, so I'm dating myself a little bit. But Corey was the first ever person on the internet to teach internet marketing.
Mm.
So he had written a book called Car Secrets Revealed. And it was this way how he like, how to negotiate with car dealerships to get cars really cheap. And he created this ebook and he started selling it on the internet. And then he turned around and started teaching people how to do the same, like how to write an ebook and sell it on the internet. And I took his course, and I think it was like $300 at the time, which was way more money than I could afford at the time. And just to give you an idea, like out of Corey's group came like Armin Morin, who started the big seminars.
Yeah.
And out of the big seminars, all the John Reeses, the Frank Kerns, the Andy Jenkins, like God bless his soul, like all of the original internet marketers came out of big seminar, and Armin came out of Corey's kind of circle. And so I remember just like, okay, well, the dude told me to like write a book. And at that time, I was like, I'm going to put it under a pen name so I don't have to be public about it. And I wrote a book under the pen name called Mark Mercado. I still remember my pen name to this day. And I just followed what the dude said. He's like, write a book, find places where you can buy ads and have the ads go to the page that sells the book. And if you can make more money than you spend on ads, you win. And I'm like, seems pretty good. And again, Ashton, I think I was just right place, right time, because that's when I was too late to the Google AdWords game, and I wasn't going to figure that part out. But Facebook had just came on the platform in terms of their ads platform in beta,
Yeah.
as did a company called Plenty of Fish. Same time, they both released their ad platforms, and Plenty of Fish's pitch was like, look, we've got all this user data from our subscribers, and now you can turn around and buy ads. And I don't know if you were advertising back then, but man, it was the wild, wild west. You could say anything and do anything and show. And some original Facebook marketer came up with this concept of the gray shirt girl. And it was this random chick that showed cleavage. And the basic ads training that was given at the time was, if you can show a girl with cleavage, you'll get clicks and you'll sell your stuff. So I'm like, okay, let's just do it. And long story short is we started buying some ads on Facebook and buying some ads on Plenty of Fish at the same time. And we're spending not much money, like let's call it $20 or whatever. But of the $20 we spent, we made like $22. And I was like, okay, like I guess this works. And we just kept using the gray shirt girl and saying stuff you can't say on Facebook nowadays and doing things you can't do nowadays on Facebook. But that was literally the beginning. And I started doing this over and over, and like $20 spends turned into $50 spends, turned into $100 spends. And every time you spent a little, you made a little bit more. And I'm like, okay, I got this. And then took another course, and they said, well, don't just sell an ebook, like sell a course. And so we created a course. And I mean, the rest, as they say, is history. But what happened was I was doing this for years in my own little corner, not talking to anybody about it, just kind of doing it. And I remember going to an event one day, and the person at the front of the room basically asked a question and said, how many in here use Facebook ads to try to grow your business? And I think like 80+% of the hands went up. And then the second question he asked was, and how many of you found it profitable? And I was the only hand that stayed up. And to me, it's just like, yeah, you spend a little bit of money, you make a little bit more. And it just dawned on me at that very moment that maybe people don't understand this. Like people just don't get it. And so in a blink of an eye, I made this mental shift to say, well, I'm going to be just a generic internet marketing consultant. And now I'm going to be a Facebook ads consultant. I didn't even know what the heck that meant, but I was like, I'm going to show people that. So we started kind of teaching people how to do it and helping people that way. And then people just came up to us and were like, well, I mean, it's too confusing. Can you do it for us? And we're like, well, I don't know, but I could try. And that was like the beginning of the agency. And so we had this like consultancy and this agency, and then more people were saying, hey, can you help us with the agency? And honestly, like, I think we got lucky. We met the right group of people. Those people introduced us to another group of people. And we ended up being like, working with Joe Polish, and then Joe Polish introduced us to his own network. And we ended up working with some great names, of which if we mention the names, like we would know who they are, which is cool and all. And I say that only to say, and Ashton, you probably know this just as well as I, and hopefully none of our clients are watching this. But like some of these big name clients are such a pain in the ass to work with. Like it's great on our credibility to be like, hey, look who I work with. But like my heart is working with the folks that nobody knows because they're not as much of a pain in the ass about how to run stuff with. But again, long story short, it's almost just like you stumbled across it. Like I was in the right place, right time, saw Facebook ads and Plenty of Fish ads. I just felt like Facebook was the way to go. Thank God, because Plenty of Fish ended up closing their ads platform, not there long after. And we were just kind of one of the first movers to figure it out and stay with it. And fortunately, like yourself, some of us don't realize I just spent this last week with Jay Abraham. And it's funny when you have a talk with Jay, like, he's one of the legends in our space, like one of the original OGs of direct response marketing. And half the room that I was in there with didn't know who the hell he was. Right.
Mm,
Because it's like this new generation of entrepreneurs and
yeah.
marketers and business owners. But like yourself, man, I studied the greats, the Jays of the day, and all the Claude Hopkins, all the stuff, and all the people who are alive and not alive anymore. And you cut your teeth at direct response, and then a cool platform like Facebook comes around and says you could do that digitally. And I think where we just got lucky was we bridged the gap between direct response and social marketing when other people were either social marketers or direct response marketers and couldn't bridge that gap. So right place, right time, all worked out for us. And I call that the $100 million decision because years later, now here we are and we get to celebrate some like just the stars aligning. I wish I could take some credit for it, but it's not the case.
Well, and to a certain extent, the humility is amazing, but you guys have definitely done some incredible stuff over the years. And so you got to that point, you built a consulting, spun out an agency from it.
Right.
And then what happened next? You really started to build the agency. I know you'd kind of taken a different
Yeah,
path than
right.
most people. Walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think the good thing is when you're in the right place in the right time and the stars align a little bit for you and you start working some big name clients talk to other big name clients and they talk to other clients and you start getting results. One of the big things for us was we worked with a company at the time, this is years ago, the first time, their first launch was The Truth About Cancer. And The Truth About Cancer that year, I mean, I think we generated something like 1 million leads and they did 4 million in revenue in their first launch. They did it again the following year and it turned into like $19 million and 4 million leads. And like it blew up. And what happened was we started getting a reputation. So more and more people came to us. And me as let's call it a novice business owner, like I knew how to run ads, I guess. But as a novice business owner, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, shoot, we've got to grow. And so I started hiring, media buyers. We just called them account managers and like copywriters. And we had team. And all of a sudden, before I knew it, we had like this team of 30. And here, little Nick, who like, even to this day, and if you look at my business now, it's very simple. It's streamlined. We have no employees. It's a streamlined process. But at the time, I'm like, I all of a sudden had to be a CEO,
Mm.
which I didn't know how to be. I knew how to be a great practitioner of my craft. I didn't know how to lead people that great. So we're starting to build this company, and employees are coming on. Now I'm responsible for paying people's salary to pay their mortgages. And all of a sudden, I started to notice. I think two things happened, frankly. One, the quality of the service we were providing started to shrink because I just didn't have a handle on it. It was growing too fast. And now clients were getting pissed off. And so our reputation was at hand. And I think the other part of it is I was building a business that I started to love to hate.
Mm.
And as a result of that, I started to, without even knowing it, self sabotage my own business because I was like, I need a way out. And the cowardly way out is just let the whole thing implode. And then I have an excuse to go spin off something new. Now, fortunately, I caught myself before the whole thing self sabotage. But yeah, what we had to do was that just scale back. And I started to just think like, where can I provide the most value? Who can I serve the best? What does an ideal business look like for Nick and his team? And so we kind of scaled back the agency from, helping everybody and working with as many clients as possible and having the biggest team as possible to right now we work with 10, maybe 12 clients. I'm somewhat personally involved in every client that we work with. We have a very small, lean and mean team of like 5 people to cover all the things we need. And like our agency operates on that level now. And again, that's just allowing me to sleep well at night and, not have too much stress and still have kind of the bottom line revenue that we're all going for. So that was a bit of the transition from the agency and what happened there.
Well, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that because I think it's a common flaw or mistake that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make is where they feel the pressure of going and being a CEO, build a
Sure.
bigger team, more operations, and it's almost like the compulsion of we're growing, we're scaling, we must therefore scale everything else around it. But you
Right.
have been, it seems like, very narrowed and focused on how do we be more effective, not just bigger.
Sure. Yeah.
Walk me through a
And
little
you
bit
know
of
what?
that.
I would love your insights because I know like you've built a great like an empire on the agency side of it, and like that's the other side of it. But for me, well, I think a couple things lined up. So one, I did this like personality profile assessment thing that was some guy invented it and ended up was scheduled to win a Nobel Prize, but he died before he could, so he couldn't get the prize. That's the story they told me about it. But it's a conglomerate of various different tests, and the point is at the end of it when it was revealed to me by the facilitator who helped me go through this, they basically said to me, they identified things that were true about myself that I didn't even know were true. Like I knew they were true, but I never communicated in that way. And before getting into all the details, ultimately at the end of the day, they told me, and I knew this to be true, that my greatest value in life was autonomy.
Mm.
Like if I just could have autonomy, and I realized when I look back on my life, anytime that I had extreme amounts of stress or dissatisfaction in life, it was when I didn't have autonomy, when I wasn't free to make the decisions and do what I want and wake up when I want and all that kind of stuff. So coupling that with realizing that, to your point, like we are always taught up and to the right. Like if you're looking at a graph as an entrepreneur, you have one direction and it's up and to the right. Scale, 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 scale. And I read all the books, Vern Harnish and all of it. And it just didn't settle well with me because what I started to realize, and this is for me personally, so please, what is it? The opinions shared on this conversation with Ashton and I are not Ashton's. They're just mine. They're my opinions, and it's not right for everybody. Please seek professional counsel on thinking about these things. So with that disclaimer out there, I was just like, well, wait a second. Is there a way to build a business that I realize now that my business is never sellable, right? So I don't have an exit plan from that perspective. And that's just the grave I decided to lay myself in. And that's okay. I'm okay with that as long as it's a cash machine. But I started to think about like, are there ways where if we think about why do we get in business? For me, I got into business so I could have a certain lifestyle. And so it was kind of a lifestyle business to start, but it was not so much lifestyle. I just wanted to know that my kids were taken care of, my family was taken care of, unlike the situation that I grew up in. And when that starts to happen, I wanted to see if there was a way where the needs could be met without the perception of the scale. Because to me, what I realized real quickly was scale meant more complexity, more team members, more headaches, more top line, but doesn't necessarily mean more bottom line.
Right.
Or what kind of numbers are we really looking at? And I was in Denver speaking at the ClickBank conference years and years and years ago. And I bumped into my old friend, Lo Silva. And I have to give him credit for this because we were talking and he's like, hey man, what's going on? I'm like, yeah, everything's great. But I think I'm in this season of my life where I'm scaling down. When everyone else is scaling up, I'm scaling down. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, look, I want to make the same and I want to have the same impact, but I want to do less of the complexity involved to get there. And he said, Nick, you're not, and I give him credit and I love this. And it's a mantra of ours now, but he said, Nick, you're not scaling down, you're netting up.
Mm.
And that term just hit me. I was like, okay, what if I can build a life and a business around the concept of netting up? So meaning my bottom line net, whether that's money, relationships, people, whatever, but the bottom line net, take home, live on, that continues to rise while the complexity of scale continues to come down. How can I net up while bringing the complexity down? And this just fit my lifestyle well in terms of like being autonomous and not having all this motion intact. So when I started to evaluate business and life that way, like, one of the things, and we're just two media buyers having a conversation here, like, yes, I love to show the flashy ROAS that we get and all these great numbers, and they're true. They're not lies, but let me just give you a behind the scenes look at what that actually means. Like, I stack the odds in my favor. Right. So as an agency, you say, well, people ask, how do you get such great results? Well, number one, we vet our clients completely. Like if they're not a great business already doing great things, we won't take them on. I wouldn't have these numbers if we take on a newbie startup company and help them. Like we are not good helping people start. We're good at helping people scale. Right. So that's one thing that we stack in our favor. One of the things that we generally do is we generally work with people who have high value offers. So someone who sells a mastermind or a high ticket program or something like that. Well, what does that mean for us? It means no matter what your acquisition costs to get a high value client, there's a great ROI there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put me in the e-commerce world and you're like, hey, sell this $49 trinket, I haven't tried before, but I might be the first to tell you, I might not have decent ROI selling the $49 trinket, but I do have selling the $10,000 thing. So all that to say is like, literally the reason I started to realize when I can stack the odds in my favor, my good friend Todd Herman calls it, you determine the field of play that you play on. Because if you're playing on someone else's field, then you're playing by their rules. If you can determine the field of play and you determine your own rules, then you always win. So those are the choices I made. What does it mean to always win? Choose the clients we work with, build the size of the company we choose, have the working relationships with our vendors that we work with. And that again, is worked out well for us. And when you look at it from I guess a monetary perspective, and we don't really have to talk about that so much, but like when I look at it, the take home that comes into our family is the equivalent of CEOs of multinational bloody $800 million companies. Now, my company is nowhere close to an $800 million company, but for a lot less effort, if I could have the same take home and orchestrate a lifestyle that still serves clients and serves people and serves us all at the same time, then that is kind of our guiding light and our guiding principles, if that makes
I
sense.
love that. It's such valuable insight. Did it take you a long time to come to that level of clarity and certainty about what you were trying to build, or have you always had that level?
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely not always had it. I tell people I'm a slow learner, like an extra slow learner. So like, how people say like, don't try not to learn from your own mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes. It's like for me, I learn from other people's mistakes and I have to repeat the same mistake 900 times before it clicks. I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. So the first bunch of years, man, was just riddled with frustration and anger and giving up and like, why isn't it working? Like there was I don't know where people's spiritual levels are at with stuff, but like I honestly felt like, as weird as this sounds, like there must be a curse on me or something because like everything I touch turns to ash and
Mm.
like what the hell is going on? So it took a repetition. And rather than this took me forever to figure out, but again, rather than beating my head around trying to do the thing that I was never successful in doing, i.e., building a mega business and up and to the right and peacocking amongst my friends and being like, look at me, it took forever for me to kind of like shift out of that and say, well, what's right for Nick? And even if that
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's right for everybody else, we finally like feel like we're in that bit of a place as of a handful of years ago.
Wow. I'm curious, 'cause, especially when it comes to the entrepreneur world and the coaching world, you probably get this all the time when you're talking to clients of like, what are their business goals, their business objectives, and they'll just throw out revenue numbers. It's like, well,
Yeah,
why
right.
is that your revenue goal? What does that actually
Yeah,
mean for you? What does that actually
yeah,
do
yeah.
for you? It always kind of comes down to like they're throwing out large numbers. I'm curious, like when it comes to certainty like that, clarity like that, I find that it typically requires a pretty persistent focus and clarity on what your
Sure,
objective is. Do you
sure.
have a standard like routine that you do? Everyone's now up in morning formulas and morning routines. Do you have
Yeah,
something that you
yeah.
follow?
It's changed over the years. A good friend of mine's Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning, and we'd always have these arguments because he's like, Nick, everybody's a morning person. I'm like, Hal, not me. And he goes, no, 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 everyone's a morning. I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, don't keep your morning routines to yourself. Like they're not for me. But I think maybe it's a day routine is one thing to see it, and then there might be another insight that might be valuable. But how we see so we structure our days around like what serves our family best, right? So I've got two young kids. You have one or two,
Two.
Ashton? You
Yeah,
have a
two
couple.
boys.
Yeah, yeah. So you got a couple as well. So you get it. Oh, how old are they again?
4 and 1.5.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm in the thick of it too. Like I'm at 6 and 5 right now. So mine are in school, which is a little bit of the difference there. But like, so our routine is simple. My wife works with me in the business, which by the way, without her, we would not have what we have today. Like we very much
Mm.
complement each other, and she's a very ops driven admin of like her. She is project based, move things forward. That's where her brain goes. Mine is more like visionary ish, front facing, marketing kind of stuff. So we complement each other very well that way. So fortunately, we've had that going for us. And I got to admit that if I didn't have her, like the first few years of my journey without her were way more difficult. And now that we've kind of come together to work together, that's helped a lot. Um, but our routine is simple. Like we wake up at 5 a.m. and the moment we open our eyes, we get ready and we start work because like from 5 to 7 is the window that we are the most productive. The kids are still sleeping. Everybody's down. The rest of the world is down. I'm on Pacific Standard Time. A lot of people are later than that. So it gives us an opportunity to do what, but like my
Mm.
creative get work type done is from 5 a.m. To 7 a.m. At 7 a.m., the kids wake up, which means the entire day shifts. We get them ready. We get them off to school. I drive them to school personally every day. And then I'm back at home from 9 till 12. And that's our working day. So 5 till 7, kids time, 9 to 12. At 12, I work out and I do whatever I consider to be, let's call it bliss following, right? Whatever kind of excites me, jazzes me up. I train jujitsu. I'm now training for a Spartan race because my friend Den Martell encouraged me to do that. I don't know why the hell I'm doing that, but I'm doing a Spartan race. So I'm training for that. Like, I live in Kelowna now on the west coast of Canada, and like there's mountain biking and wake surfing and all these things that kind of just realign my focus and get me
Yeah.
back into a play state, which I think is super important, by the way. But yeah, so it's not a morning routine, but 5 to 7 work, 7 to 9 kids, 9 to 12 work, 12 till about 3 is either work or play. Whatever we have. 3, the kids come home, and then it's all family. We go out, we do family things, and then it's rinse and repeat ultimately. Um, but the takeaway might be like the cadence of not just working straight for 8 hours. We found that to be just extremely hard on us, and it doesn't work. But early risers have a set focused time of work hard, work hard, work hard, no distractions, no email, no nothing, just work. You know, spend some time with the other priorities, spend some time in play, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote a book about that, I'm sure, the idea of just throwing play into your life, and then topping it off with other work and family and whatever the priorities were. And I found that not the more play I added, but the moment I added passion slash play slash blissful activity, the productivity on the work side got way better.
Mm.
And when you put those beautiful constraints in where you know that your team can only talk to you between these hours, or you can only talk to clients, like, I don't have a calendar link anymore, and we deleted all our calendars, so nobody can get me on the phone now. And it's like, that's just better. And we seem to figure out how to get it done. So I think the important thing for anybody is, I think Hormozy talks about it, it's just habits versus goals.
Yeah.
Like the idea that if you set a goal, and you just think about the goal and how do I get the goal, whatever that's a number goal or whatever goal. It's like, how do I get there? How do I get there? And sometimes you're motivated, sometimes you're not. But if it's just habits, like what do you need to do and who do you need to be every single day to achieve whatever outcome you're looking to achieve by the end of the year, 3 years or 5 years? When you focus on the habits, the goals just kind of happen. And I found that when I redirected my attention from the goal to doing the work,
Yeah.
then the work ends up bringing the goal. And then there's David Neagle, his COO, Steph Tess. I just want to give a shout out to her because she's great. We were talking about this conversation of goals long term and like, what does it mean? And, generally people have this idea of like, I set a goal and either one of two things happen. You hit the goal and then you realize you're not all that satisfied anyways, or you don't hit the goal and now you're disappointed and not satisfied for not hitting it. So it's like a lose-lose. You win or you lose, but it's a loss. And when we're talking about it, she said, one way to look at it, Nick, and this changed the game for me. She said, when you think about an area in your life, whether it's finances or health or whatever, don't think about the number. Don't think about, I want to be 182 pounds with 10% body fat. Or don't think I want, $17 million of revenue per year, reoccurring MR, whatever. She said, instead of that, why don't you think about the feeling associated with that outcome?
Mm.
So when I think about health, what is the feeling that comes to mind that I want to embrace? It's vibrancy. When I think of money or finances, what is the feeling I want to have? Confidence, right? And so when I thought about it from that perspective, and so what do I need to do every day to achieve the feeling of the outcome that I would have if I had those goals? That's really set things straight for me. And fortunately, sometimes you hit the goal, sometimes you don't, sometimes you go over, sometimes you go under, but it doesn't matter because at least you're in that place of like, I'm en route and I feel this way and we're tracking a certain direction, if that makes sense.
Wow. I mean, that sounds super liberating. I'm curious, when it comes to making that transition into this new way that you're going to operate, the way you structure your days. I mean, it sounds like
Mm,
this is what a lot of people are looking for, right? How do I get the money, but also the freedom? How do I also
sure.
make sure I spend time with family and get times for fun, but also make sure I get the job done? I'm sure it's no
Sure.
easy task. I'm sure it took you some time to figure it out. Was it a hard decision that you made one day of just, I'm changing the way I operate? Or did you find that it was kind of a migration?
That's a great question. And I think it's a combination of both. Like at some point, I think the decision needs to be made that I'm going to operate on a certain way. Even though you say, I don't know how to figure that out just yet, I don't know what that looks like. It's just that hard line in the sand to say, okay, today's a day that I'm going to try to operate a different way. And then obviously there's a process of learning that goes along the way. And we're still learning. Like to this day, I'll wake up and realize, oh, it wasn't until a friend of mine, Dan Martell, a neighbor of mine, like wrote this book, Buy Back Your
Yeah.
Time. And he lives down the street from me. We spend 3 nights a week together. He was over for the Super Bowl recently. And even though I was in his presence, understanding how he operates from that principle, it wasn't until like last week where something as simple as like turn off all email notifications from 5 till 7, like my focus time, dawned on me. I'm like, oh my God, like, why don't I just do that? And that small thing made such
Yeah.
a big shift. But I bring that up to say, like, years into this, it wasn't until a couple of weeks ago that I realized to turn off email notifications during my focus time. Right. So I think it's always and I think that's probably the posture that would serve people well. It's, I'm going to attempt to move in a certain direction, whatever that direction is. And I'm going to realize that there's going to be things to learn along the way. And if I give myself permission to fail and learn along the way, as long as I'm making forward progress towards that outcome, keeping in mind that that outcome could change and I could change my mind tomorrow. To give yourself like that flexibility and the permission to do that, I think that's what's going to serve a lot of people, rather than saying, tomorrow I got to change everything, and if it's not changed, then I fail. Like it's hard to go about it that way.
Yeah. Well, I love that, and essentially the situation is, how do I be more effective with less energy output, right? And it seems like this is almost the exact
Right,
model that you've applied to your consulting side of what you guys do for other businesses. Talk to me a little
right.
bit about what that is. How did you come up with this model, and what is it that you guys are actually doing?
Yeah. So again, remember, Ashton, I'm a really slow learner, right? So it takes me years and years to figure something out, and being beat over the head with like, Nick, don't do it this way. So when we had this weird situation where, we were running the agency, but it wasn't scalable, right? Because we knew we could only work with X number of people at X number of time, and that's all we could handle. And there was no desire to go past that. So that then, re-asked the question, well, if I want to have both impact and income, what do I need to create that can have impact and income that doesn't kind of take away from what we're trying to do? And so years and years and years ago, when this happened, we said, well, we'll have a consultancy, whatever that meant, like a training arm. So at first it meant we'll sell courses. And so we created courses and sold courses. And then I realized I'm not really good at creating courses or selling them for that matter. And then even when I do, like, it just bothered me. And you probably feel the same way. It's like the completion rate. Like when you give someone something to do, just follow it and you'll get the results. And like 0.01% of it do the work. They buy the thing, but they don't do it. I'm like, okay, I can't be doing this anymore. So then I thought, well, what if we upped it? What if it wasn't just buying courses, but you'd be involved in a bigger program? Like
Mm,
if you invest more, then surely you will have a greater ability to have an impact on you. And so we created like an elevated program and said, no more courses. We're just going to do that. And then again, long story short, without boring everybody, we realized that even on the agency side, like our North Star, where we shine the most, is helping people get people who sell high ticket offers, or high value offers, as I like to call them, through sales appointments. Like that's where we shine.
yeah.
Anywhere outside of that, e-commerce, information selling, courses, webinars, blah, 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 all this stuff, we're just not good at. And it took me forever to be okay with that. Like I wanted to be like ultimate media buyer. Not the case. I suck at 99% of it, but we're really, really, really world class at one thing. And so when it came to the consultancy again, and this was just as of um, 2 years ago, where it took us to this place. So, well, what if we just have a program that was super simplified, that said, if you're a business owner that needs more qualified sales appointments on your sales team's calendars, and you want to use paid media to do that, and you wanted the least complicated funnel as possible, because that's where we kind of shine. It's so many people are good at behavioral analytical marketing and all that. I'm not. My mind doesn't go that place. I'm like, hey, look, my funnel is one page with one 4-minute video that offers an application that closes people onto a call. That's it. Is it for everybody? Maybe not, but it's one thing that should be considered. So I say all that to say is, now that's what we do. We have either done for you, we'll build the funnel for you, or we'll show done with you, show you how to do it. But at the end of the day, it's, do you have a high value offer that requires sales appointments? And either A, your current webinar funnel or VSL funnel is not working as well as it used to, or B, it's just capped and you want another thing to bolt on to that process to get even more, then that's kind of where we come in. We're the front end bolt on, as I like to call it, because here's the reality. Ashton, is it okay if I just share like my fundamental premise on
Please,
why we came to this place?
please.
Yeah. So I think the greatest discovery that I found in the last decade of doing online marketing came to me about 5 years ago. And it was the reality that all of our prospects move at 3 different speeds. Now, for the sake of easy language and for everyone to easy understand without getting cutesy with it, it's fast, medium, and slow, right? People move quickly, or they move medium. In other words, they need multiple touch points before making a buying transaction, or they move slow. They sit on your list for years and years and years, and they eventually buy. Now, where I found the gap in the industry is whoever invented the sales funnel. I wish I could give them credit. I don't know who they were, right? I know Dean Jackson, a friend of ours, created the opt-in page. He was the originator of the original opt-in page, which God bless him. Thank God for that. But if you look at our industry, the vast majority of everybody who's teaching anybody anything about online marketing and funnels is appealing to the medium mover. It's someone who says, offer some sort of an opt-in, i.e. a webinar, a lead magnet, something like that, a challenge, an event, or whatever, and then bring them into your world. And through a customer journey of multiple touch points, through ads and emails, and let's call it a webinar that's extended to 60 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, like through a bunch of touch points, you warm that prospect up. And at the end of it, you give them a buying decision, and a percentage of the people will buy. Great. The modern day funnel in its fullest extent. But what I started to realize, well, wait a second, that's just one speed. What about the slow people that we all call dead leads because they don't buy right now? And this conversation won't be about, how to nurture a slow lead. But where the aha moment for me is, well, I don't know about you, Ashton. I don't remember the last time I went on a webinar.
Yeah.
Um, and even when so even when, I realized you had your Human X program and a bunch of various programs, like I know you have webinars to recruit people into that program, but I'm a fast mover. So what did I do? I reached out to Ashton directly. I'm like, hey man, I love this. I think our people can benefit from it. How does it work? And Ashton's like, this is how it works. I'm like, great, done. And so if we all were to actually look at our business, we would recognize that some of our best and easiest, highest converting clients who become our greatest ambassadors and closest friends and all that are people who are fast movers, people who will never opt into something, people who will not sit through a webinar, people who won't attend your live event, who won't attend a challenge or a PLF sequence or any of that, not because they don't want to, but they're fast movers. They want an answer and they want it now. They have a problem. They're aware of that problem and they're just looking for a solution. So they don't need all the marketing hoopla. They're just like, do you have a solution, Ashton? Yes, great. Thank you. Let's talk about if it's a good fit. It's a great fit. Great. I'm in. And so we've designed now this simple, it's not easy, but it's simple. It's a 1-page, 4 to 6 minute video funnel, quote unquote, designed specifically for the fast mover audience in your prospect base. And we're not saying turn off your webinar funnels or turn off your VSLs or turn off any of that. Those are needed for the medium movers. But let's just bolt on a fast process for the people who end up saying, yes, I'm in, get on a call with you. And what we find true to be about the fast people is time poor and money rich, right? They don't have the time, but they have the money to invest. Secondly, they're problem aware and actively seeking a solution right now. So they're not looking for more information to make a decision. They're looking for a solution to make a decision. Yep. Whereas the medium mover is like, well, give me some more information. That's why they opt in for webinars and that sort of thing. And then thirdly, they're very market aware, meaning when they see an opt-in page, they know that's the beginning of a marketing sequence. When they see a webinar, they know that that's a pitch disguised. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying they're aware, so they avoid. So when we can speak a different language and have a different marketing process specifically to that fast mover, they come in faster, they convert higher, and they're your greatest ambassador. Now, can you build an entire business around that? Maybe, but we're not saying so. We're just saying, look, recognize that there's fast, medium, and slow. Have a process for all three of those speeds. And now you have more of a wholehearted or an all-encompassing vision of how to grow your business and how to acquire customers rather than just thinking about one lane, if that makes sense.
No, dude, I love that. I mean, so we talk about this in marketing training, right? If we go back and use the OG of Eugene Schwartz's, states of
Yeah.
awareness of
I don't know if you could
marketing,
see the
right?
book, but
I
it's right
can,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
States of awareness in marketing. There's always 5,
Mm-hmm.
every market, the consumers fall into one of the 5 states. And what I love about this though, is that normally marketers take this as I need to have ads for each state of awareness, which is true.
Right.
But I love
Sure.
how you guys have gone a step further to realize that no, the actual customer journey should be different based on the
Right.
state of awareness or where that market or that customer is currently at, which is clear why you
Right.
guys are producing such great results. I'm curious, are there any examples or, I know off this call, you show me several of the examples that you guys have been able to achieve, which are absolutely
Yeah.
incredible. Could you share any of those here?
Well, I'll start with mine, and then we can talk about a couple of different samples of some of the people who've gone through this program. So mine, I mean, my original funnel, and I tried to buck the system because I'm like, oh, I'm terrible on webinars. So I'm like, I'm not going to do a webinar funnel or VSL. But my original fast track process was a lead magnet. And then on the thank you page of the lead magnet, we'd present a call offer, right? To say, hey, if you meet this criteria, why don't you hop on the call? We'll discuss. And we use that to enroll people into our programs. And that was great. And it worked. And I honestly thought that was like the golden scepter of getting fast track people. And through that process, just again, we're in a similar industry. Like it's an expensive industry because
Yep.
everybody helps coaches and consultants and all that. So we were generating sales calls from about $600 to $800 a call, which meant, I mean, it was expensive. Was it profitable? 90% of the time, but it meant our sales team had to be right on the ball and their conversion rates couldn't dip. It meant we had very little like margins for any sort of error. We had to factor in our delivery costs and keep our delivery costs down, but it worked. And I thought, you know what? It's an expensive industry. It is what it is. So we were generating calls between $600 to $800 a call. At that time, I had one or two sales guys, and we're putting about 2 to 4 calls on the calendar every day for them. And it was a nice little humming along business. Then I discovered, I said, well, wait a second. I'm not even practicing what I preach because fast movers, when they see an opt-in page, they don't even like that.
Mhm.
Says, well, what if I just remove the opt-in page and I just did a very nuanced but specific way to get them to this call offer? And we did that. Long story short, now at scale, and when I say scale, it's spending anywhere from like $5 to $8 grand a day. So not massive scale. We just don't have the sales capacity to handle any more than this. But at scale, we're generating calls. We're putting 5 calls on the calendar for each of our salespeople, and there's like 3 to 5 of them right now. Pop, 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 pop. But on average, the average cost per call schedule went from $600 to $800 to between $80 and $120.
Wow.
But here's the best part about it, like we're talking, is that, well, people say those are just bad leads. It can't be good leads. They haven't consumed an hour-long webinar or anything. No, it's just the opposite. Because you're speaking a different language to the one who's more aware, they convert higher, they show up to calls better, and they again, the salespeople have a less difficult time because again, the conversation is not about like, hey, convincing them to join. It's, do we have a good fit? Can we help you? If yes, great. So that's our example of volume going up with cost coming down. Another great example I love is one of our clients, Kelsey, for example. So she helps older women, so post 40-year-old women who are trying to get pregnant, who's tried IVF and all these other things to try and get pregnant and hasn't had much success. Her specialty in the health space is working with this specific woman. She's got a $3,000 offer, which is not incredibly high, but a $3,000 offer. I think it's like an 8 to 12-week coaching program to help coach them through this experience. And she's got phenomenal results. Like she can't guarantee you get pregnant, but pretty darn close. So when she came to us, her average cost per call scheduled was in the $60 range. Oh man, what it would be like to be in that industry. Having $60 calls booked, man. But her average cost per call was $60 call booked, and she was generating approximately 10 calls a month. She built $1 million business around this. Like, it was good on her.
Yeah.
But again, same sort of thing as a webinar, as a lead magnet webinar. And she's like, well, let's just try and bolt on the fast track thing on the front end. So she ended up bolting on the fast track. She went through our program. And now she averages 22 calls a week. And the average cost per call is $27 from $60. Wow. So you could just see it. It opens up opportunity. It doesn't change the business. It doesn't mean you have to recreate anything. She doesn't stop her medium funnel, which is a webinar funnel. She keeps that going. But now it just opens you up to another segment of your marketplace who would generally ignore you because they don't operate on the same traditional marketing scale. So like, I know that was only a couple of examples, but the idea is like, if you're just selling a high value offer, it can't hurt but to consider having a process designed specifically for the fast mover.
Yeah. That's amazing. And so if someone was to join your program, let's say I came into your program, what does the program actually look like? How long is it? And what do you guys actually help me with?
Yeah, I love the question because, what's commonly known out there is like coaching programs. So I try to figure out, I'm like, we all know that the level of success for someone to have through a program means you need the least number of steps and to make it as easy as humanly possible, right? I mean, and that's why we have agencies, because technically, if we could buy the ads for our clients, that's highest percentage of success than saying, here, let me show you how to do it and try to learn everything Ashton's learned in the last decade condensed down to one thing. But, some people just need that. So I started to think about what is the way that we can almost guarantee, can never guarantee success, but make it as easy as possible. So what we did was there's three elements of the program. First element is we take my funnel, my current live active, we call it a fast track funnel. We take my current live fast track funnel and we install it into your high level account. Now we could do it in ClickFunnels or whatever else, but generally for the ease of use of it, we literally open up a high level account for you on our dollar. We pay for the account and we continue to pay for it. Their pro accounts like worth $500 a month. We just take care of all that and we install my funnel into it. So when I say funnel, I'm not just talking about the pages. We install the pages, we install the calendars, we install the text automations, we install the email follow-ups, we install the pipelines, we install everything that is currently live running in my funnel into your funnel. So step number one, nothing to build. We've done all the building for you. All the heavy lifting, all the nitty gritty of the crap that's involved in the tech side of it is all taken care of. The next element, once you have that in place, is we have calls that happen more or less every day of the week, give or take, various calls, copywriting calls, ad calls, this calls, that calls, implementation calls, as we call it, to help you then customize this process for you. Because obviously my funnel says my words to my industry. Now, the good part about high level is literally we've put short codes, and I apologize if this is too tech for some of y'all, but we literally put short codes where when you set up your high level profile and you say, this is my business name, this is the name of our offer, this is the name of our call, high level automatically pulls that and inputs it into all the outputs. So now it doesn't say Nick's accelerator call, it says your pregnancy call or your whatever. But we help you implement the customizations so that the languaging on the landers just for you. We show you how to shoot, record the video script and have a video script that's just for you and customized, again, a 4 to 6 minute script. And so these calls that happen almost every day of the week are designed to help you implement every stage of the funnel. On top of that, we have like our Slack channel community, which is basically in between calls. Hey, I get stuck. They jump in the Slack channel. They're like, hey, can someone review my VSL script? Or can someone review this? Or can someone help me figure this out? Or how do I integrate my calendar or whatever? We have our team of advisors in there helping to support that. And basically our premise is no man left behind. Like if you're going to join our program, I'm so adamant because so many people join stuff and never finish. And like, I know it's not my responsibility, but it kind of feels like it is. And so we go with like a no man left behind. We're tracking your progress every step of the way. If you miss a call, we call them client concierges. Our client concierge gives you a call and says, where the heck were they're nicer than me. But I say, where the hell were you? You should have been on the call. They're like, oh, it looks like you missed a call. What happened? But either way, we're up in your face because we don't want you to be left behind. Because the last thing we want is you to spend all this money to join us. And then at the end of the day, you don't come out the other end. And I get life gets in the way and all that. But our hope is that, you have this thing fully built and designed and ready to go and generating phone calls for you. Now, the fastest person who's ever executed this was 48 hours. They just took it, bam, redid it, bam, got off to the races, started generating sales calls, and they closed their first call. They're good. That is not the norm, but that's how fast someone has done it. Generally takes someone anywhere from like 1 to 4 weeks to get it all built out. This is a 3-month program. So 1 to 4 weeks to get it all built out. And usually the remaining 2 months is there just to support, optimize, and make sure it's dialed in to getting the results that you're looking for. But that's how we kind of figured out what is the easiest way to deliver this and how can we keep people accountable from start to finish to get the darn thing done. And then at the end of the day, if they get it done, and it doesn't always work the first time. There's always iterations. And I think, Ashton does a good job at this. And there's some trainers out there who are like, oh, it's just so easy. You push a couple buttons and your marketing is brilliant, And fortunately, the AI hasn't caught up to us that people like Ashton who think and have real strategy cannot be outperformed by an AI yet. Anyways, I'm hoping. Yeah. But yeah, again, the point here is if you can remain accountable and you can just do the easy part. We've done the heavy lifting, but you just do the part that you're required to do and show up, then we can't help but see results. And if you don't get results, we have a money back guarantee and a risk reversal thing there as well to ensure that no one's left behind and everyone gets the kind of the results that they're looking for.
Wow. Well, final 2 questions for me.
Yeah, sure.
One, I know, especially in the coaching community, it seems like a lot of the coaches out there right now, they're trying to grab the most amount of people possible, right?
Yeah,
Almost
right.
anyone can fit the mold. Anyone can join our program. Anyone can hand us a credit card. Our green, your cash is just as green as
yeah,
anyone
you're
else, right?
in.
Yeah, exactly, right? You've been accepted. you're
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
who has seemed to go against the grain there, where you guys are very
Sure.
specific about who you allow in. If someone is listening to this and they're like, "Man, this is so great. This is I want whatever Nick is given." What should they have in place first? What should their business look like
Yeah.
first?
Thank you for asking. So, one, you're past the idea phase. Like this is not going to work if you like. I've got this great idea and maybe it'll work somehow. Like again, we help people scale, not start. And every time I try to help someone start, I failed miserably. Like I just don't have the know-how and the capability to help get someone off the ground. So you're past idea phase. Number two, you have a high value offer that actually works, right? So what I mean by high value offer, usually that means a lifetime value of like 3,000 minimum, maybe 5,000 minimum, all the way up. Some of our people sell $100,000 things. Some of our financial advisors over the years, their LTVs in the millions. But you need a high value offer that actually makes an impact on somebody. Like if you're just like, oh, I want to jump on the high ticket train and sell some coaching for nothing, not going to work. So high value offer. Thirdly, you need to have either yourself or your sales team on the phone and with the ability to sell. Because my whole thing falls apart if you get a ton of calendar sales appointments on your calendar and you're closing at 3%. That
Right.
nobody wins there.
Yeah.
Nobody. Right. So you need the ability, you need to have a system that's currently actually generating phone calls and you're closing those sales appointments at a rate that you're happy with. And what we generally have the rule of thumb is all of our salespeople require a 20% minimum closing ratio. Or they're not on the team for very long. So like you can use that as a gauge. But if you have a high value business that requires sales appointments, you're generally a coach, consultant, portfolio business owner. This doesn't work if you like sell the Tesla car rentals or like window cleaning services. I mean, those are high value in certain cases. It won't work for that. It's kind of an online type business, and you have a little sense of what it means to advertise online, right? If you're completely blank on that, like I don't know, I've built my entire business on referrals. It's going to be a very tricky transition for you to go into paid acquisition. So if you've kind of overcome some of those mindsets and you have that kind of business, then this will easily help you. If you don't, figure out the other things that will help you in your specific spot for sure.
Absolutely, man. Last question for me. How would people
Okay.
contact you? How would they find you? You don't have a calendar link. So how are people going to contact you to bring you
Yeah.
in?
Yeah. No, I appreciate the question. So, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm the only Nicholas Kuzmich on the planet, believe it or not. So, the good part about it is if you can figure out how to spell my name, you can find me. If you can't figure out how to spell my name, you'll never find me. So, all the social channels are at Nicholas Kuzmich. But the easiest way, if you're interested in this process, to hop on a phone and discuss with one of our people, it's nicholaskuzmich.com. NICHOLASKUSMICH.com/fast track. And that'll bring you to our page that kind of outlines this and shows you, what we do. And if it makes sense to you, then we can hop on a call and discuss that way.
Amazing. Well, Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me. You're a super humble guy, but if you're listening to this and you don't know who Nick is, Nick has been the OG behind so many incredible brands. I came into the marketing space learning from guys like him and the incredible work that he does.
Oh,
His
that's amazing.
reputation precedes him, and so thank you so much for catching up with me, dude. It's been a blast, and we'll talk
Well,
soon.
dude, I just gotta say, man, just seeing all that you're doing and all that you've accomplished, it's an inspiration. I think people just need to pay attention to your journey and your story. I like to tell people all the time, there's good marketers and there's good strategic thinkers, but rarely do you find both. And like you are bringing that to the marketplace. You're showing people that it's not about just pushing buttons and buying media, but it's understanding the psychology of direct response. And so just to see you and all that you're doing and the success you had it excites me. So congratulations on all that.
Oh, well, thank you so much, brother.